All right, let me grab a different photo to talk about some of the other. That might work. I want one with a person prominently displayed. I'm going to go with this one because this one has more of a depth of field experiment happening with it. Open this up in GIMP. All right, so another thing that we could use under colors is the color balance. All right, we've already played around with this a little bit. We played around with it in black and white as a means of creating sepia or cool tone, right? But we can also use it in a color photograph. Oh, wait, let me see if there's anything I want to do with my levels first. This is a pretty well-balanced photo. I might just grab a little bit more black right there. All right. Now, colors and color balance. Okay, so, well, you know what? First, I actually think I'm going to go into my saturation. Hue and saturation. Also, there is a saturation button by itself. It's a little more weird to play with and doesn't give as much subtlety as this does. I'm going to go with red here. Well, I think this is probably mostly red. There might be some magenta in his shirt. I'm just wanting to make his shirt feel a little more saturated. Yeah, it's mostly red. All right. So I'm just going to take this up maybe like to 30. Yeah. I just want him to stand out a bit more from the green of the trees beyond. That's about it, right? I'm pretty happy with, well, the rest of it I can play around with the color balance. Okay. So now I've got my image here. I've got the red of the shirt a little more strong against the tree there, right? But in my color balance, I can play around even more. Something I like to do in my photographs, especially if they're outdoors, is I like to take my highlights and push them a little toward yellow, and my shadows and push them a little toward purple. It's just a thing I like to do. I like the look of that. You might find that you like a different look. Whatever you do, don't go so extreme that you make your image look unnatural. All right, so I'm going to take my highlights and I'm going to push them toward yellow. I'm not going to go extreme with it. It's a subtle change, and it's mainly happening down here. That I like better. The light, like we talked about yesterday on Monday rather, the light outdoors is very blue, but once our eyes adjust to it, if it's a nice sunny day, the light feels very warm to our eyes. And I like to recreate that if it's an outdoor scene particularly. All right, let me go to my shadows. And I'm going to shift all my shadows toward purple. How do I do that? Well, I'll shift them slightly toward magenta, slightly toward blue. So let's see. Let me just go crazy with it so I can see what's being affected. Okay. Wow, that's a lot that's being affected. So, all right, let's go like minus 20. Yeah, that's way too much. Minus 5 didn't seem to be doing much, so maybe minus 10. That's a little too much too. So it must be somewhere between 5 and 10, maybe minus 7. Yeah. Now I'm gonna shift this a little more toward blue, maybe like 3, a little less than the magenta, just to give it a nice purpley look. All right. And then usually just to balance it out, just to make sure that this purple doesn't look too red, I give it a slight shift towards cyan, but that's just me. Like maybe -2 towards cyan. All right. You see what that's done? It's just taken my shadows and shifted them slightly toward purple. Okay? I think I've gone a little too far even. I'm going to still, like, again, it's a balancing act. I'm trying not to go not going too unnatural looking. There, I like that better. All right, and then my midtones, I don't know. I don't know. All right, I think maybe orange might be the way to go. So I'm going to go like 5 toward red and 5 toward yellow. Maybe a little more. So 7 and 7. And it's just a balancing act. You're just looking for the image that you would like, right? Okay, I'm going to go okay with that. Now, in doing that, let me go back. Let me go to my undo things here. You notice it kind of dulled down my greens of the trees beyond a little bit. It's not as bad as I thought. But still, I think what I'll do is hit the saturation on the greens again. So if I go to my colors and hue and saturation and just click on the green, let's see what's going to be affected by that. Yeah, that's in the trees. So let me reset that. Let me see, where is yellow? Where would I see yellow? So the trees are mostly yellow, actually. It's always a good idea to just click on each of these and play. You can always undo stuff just to see what's what. Because sometimes you'll think something is green when in fact it's actually yellow that's had black added to it. So it's the yellow that needs to be pumped up. So I'm going to crank my saturation on the yellow a little bit. Oh, it even found like this little, whatever that it was down there, and made it a little more yellow in nature. And it caught a little bit of the yellow in that I had added into this. Okay, I'm all right with that. Yeah. So, again, there was my original image as it came out of the camera. It doesn't look bad. It's just that, again, our cameras will adjust for white balance and will make adjustments to try to keep the colors from being too intense or too wild within the camera unless we have our settings in such a way that they're meant to make the colors be a bit more vibrant. And so that photo looks perfectly fine, right? But maybe it doesn't quite look the way my eyes were seeing it on that day. And on that day, my eyes were seeing a day that felt more sunny to me. So the first thing I did was play around with like crushing my shadows down, right? Because when it's a really nice sunny day, anywhere that there's shadows, the shadows seem even darker. I wanted the red of the clothing he was wearing to be stronger and to contrast really nicely with that green background. Then, to make it feel even more like a sunny day, I went into my color balance and I shifted my highlights toward yellow and my shadows toward purple. It's just a thing I like to do. It's an aesthetic thing that I enjoy. You play around and see what you like. And then after that, I just sort of played around to figure out what colors would work well in the midtones. I could have just left the midtones alone. It wasn't that they looked bad. I just thought, let me see what could happen if I shift them. And shifting them slightly toward red and yellow seemed to be the trick. But then, once I did all that, I felt like I had lost some of the saturation in my trees in the back. So I went in, I grabbed my yellow, and I upped the saturation of that. And so I went from this to this. All right. Now, again, if I felt like this was a finished photograph, then I would go into File, Export As, go back into my Assignment 2 folder and my edited images. And I could call this Depth of Field 2. All right, now, I'm going back to my base image the way it looked originally. And another thing that we can play around with is if we go into our levels. Thus far, we have only in our levels, hang on a sec, wait. I want to go back to this because I want it to still have the contrast I had there. so far in our levels, we've only dealt with value so far, right? However, you'll notice there is a thing that says channel, and it lets us click here and drop down. This lets us play around with the 3 components, red, green, and blue, as well as alpha. That doesn't apply to us right now, so it's not even grayed in. It's grayed out rather, where I can't even click on it. Alpha is just it's the name for the transparent color. And in our photograph, we don't have any alpha, so there's no need to even worry about that. Right, but if I click on any of these, right, it shows me, now I've got this set to red, so it shows me the levels of red that I have within my image, where black here represents the 0 intensity over here, meaning that red is completely off, and you see there's a big spike right there, probably because back here in all of this green, there's not much red, right? And then middle gray would be the perfect spot where it is the intensity is 50% on and 50% off. And white represents the spot where red is at 255. Right? And then I have that same kind of graphical representation along this line here, right? So one way that I could say make my reds more saturated here is to say take my middle gray and crank it this direction. Come on. And I can tell it to have more pixels in the image, where the red is between this 50% marker and fully on. I can do the same thing with green. I can do the same thing with blue. Only maybe I'll tell it to make there be less blue in the image. So once there's less blue, what's going to come out? Yellow, right? Because yellow, if I start pulling out the blue from an image, what I get left with is red and green are going to give me yellow. So I'm going to get a lot more yellow as I'm taking the blue out. All right, let's just reset all this. All right, so then there's the output level down here, where I could say where the blue is completely turned off, I actually do want a little blue in it. Where the blue is completely turned on, actually I might want it to be down a little bit less. And again, the weird thing is that if I take that blue, the fully on blue, the 255 blue, and take it all the way down here to black, my image looks a lot more yellow, you'll notice. That's because all the blue has been pulled out of it. There's no blue in this image whatsoever. And what I'm left with is red and yellow. So I get my reds, I get my yellows. I'm sorry, I'm left with red and green. So I get my reds, I get my greens, and then all these yellows, but no blue. All right, so this can be something that you play around with. All right. It can be a means of getting certain color effects that you might want. Just, again, be careful that you don't go extreme with them. Now, the same thing can be done with curves, where instead of the value, I could play with red. And I could say take this and move it like so to get things more red. But then I don't want as much of the red in the areas where there wasn't much red already. I'm getting a lot of red down in that area. I wonder if, let's see. Yeah. Like I said in class, the curves are a thing that I struggle with. My brain doesn't always quite pick up on how to make this work for me. But anyway, you can see there where I have much more saturated reds. Just it also picked up on some reds in here, and I'm not quite sure how to deal with those. I could also play with blue and take it, let's say, and say put less blue in here. Right, I can tell it's green. Let's make lots of green. We'll grab here and say lots and lots of green. All right. Now, I've made a completely unnatural looking image by doing that, right? That doesn't look natural at all. It would not be the way I would want to go, right? But I was playing around with these things in the extreme so that you could see the effects of them. All right, cancel that. Let's open up this image. All right, where the fire was so orange in color, so yellowy orange, that my camera thought, wow, we must be in a situation where the light is extremely warm. So I'm going to white balance by adding blue. All right. So if I've got an image like this, this could be potentially beyond repair. I don't know. I'll see. I'll find out. But there are some things we could play around with this. One thing you can try, it doesn't always work, but it's something you can try, is where is it? There's, here where it says auto. Out next to auto, there is a white balance. Right? And this is where GIMP is going to examine the colors and it's going to figure out what should the white balance be. And it did pretty good. It didn't, right? The image is a bit warmer, right? As opposed to that. So that's not bad. And if that was what I wanted, then maybe that would be the way to go. Let's see, is there anything else that I wanted to play with? Maybe I'll open this one up. So let me just walk through editing the color on one more image, all right? So I've got this photograph right here, all right? Not a bad photograph by any means, but maybe I feel like the colors could be a little more strengthened. Because one of the things when I took this photograph, I like this pier feels a lot more like a bluish gray than it does right now in this photograph. The shadows in the water looked much more like greenish to me than they do in the photograph. And maybe even the sky could use a little more saturation. Well, again, without going into territories where things don't feel natural. So the first thing I want to do, again, is go into my levels. And, okay, not bad, not bad. Maybe I'll take my white in just a bit. Yeah. Maybe just a little on my black, but I don't want to go crazy. Then this pole here is a little darker than I would like it to be, so I'm going to come this way just a bit. Hang on a second. Yes, Augie, can I help you? You can sit next to me. I just need you to be quiet because I'm recording for my class, okay? All right, have a seat. All right, so that made the pole a little lighter, made my sand a bit brighter. Pulling that black slider over, got some of these shadows here a little darker in comparison to this here. All right, so now then, I think I will go into my hue and saturation. No, what? Yeah, I'm going to go into hue and saturation. Let me see. I want to see what the shadows in there are made out of. Are they made out of yellow, perhaps? Yep. All right. So I'm going to put that on. I'm going to up my saturation of that just a bit. Not nearly that much. That's way too much. So like maybe to 20. Let's see how that looks. All right. So that made those a bit greener. But I think I'm going to shift this yellow slightly toward red. That's that kind of like olive green kind of color that I like about the way the water looks in this particular spot when I'm there. And it made all these things back here feel a bit more like natural green as well. All right, go with that. So I'm gonna up the saturation of my blue maybe to 30. Yeah, that was giving me a sky I would like. Okay, all right, I'm gonna hit OK. All right, so that did what I wanted in the shadows in the water and the blue of the sky. And some of these trees back here got a little more of the kind of reddish green that I like. So I'm going to go to my colors and go to color balance. Now let's see, this right here, I wonder if I can get this to look more blue. Is that my highlights? Yep, that's exactly what it is. All right, so I'm going to go a little more blue with it. So maybe I'll push my midtones toward yellow so that things feel a little more... No. Maybe I'll shift them toward red instead. Maybe red and yellow. And my shadows, I just like my shadows purple. That's just the way I am. So yeah, I'm just going to turn off what I did with the midtones because it was affecting the blueness of the water right there, and I didn't like that. Okay. Maybe if I shift it towards cyan just a bit. No, I didn't like the way that looked. All right, highlights. Maybe shifted too much toward blue and cyan. So let's go, say, 10 toward blue and 5 toward cyan. And yeah, that allowed this to be more blue without, yeah. Yeah, I like that. Okay. And my purpley shadows. Actually, I think, let me reset that. You okay? Okay. Maybe I want to shift this toward yellow. Yeah, I think this, for this one, that's what I'm going to do. Because those purple shadows were just making everything feel a little too bluish. And what that's doing is because most of my shadows seem to be in these concrete things here, and shifting them slightly toward yellow makes them feel a little bit warmer, like concrete should, and not so gray. So I'm going to go with that. All right. So again, there's my original image. That's what I've turned it into. Where originally it was kind of, not bad, but a little bit dark and not very saturated. I play with my levels first to give myself the amount of contrast I want. Hang on, Augie. Then I went into my hue and saturation to get my green shadows and my blue sky a little bit more punchy. And then lastly, went into my color balance to get this this pier to feel a little bit more blue, and for the concrete to feel a bit warmer. Now, yes, Augie.
Third one was a little bit like kind of night.
It was kind of like night. Yeah, it does. Like it looks like night right there, and here it looks like more like daytime.
Yeah, when we wake up.
Oh, okay. So there, it's got the approval of my kid. All right, so I'm going to take that and export it. And again, I would go to my assignment 2, I'd go to my edited images, and I would call this one depth of field 03. Your naming convention is up to you. Just a way of making sure that you can keep your depth of field and your motion images separate is going to be best. Right? So that now, if I go to that folder, 3 images so far. At this point, all of which are playing around with depth of field, and all of which have good, strong color effects going on, but none of them feels unnatural. I didn't push any of the colors in such a way that they look wrong. Right? That's what I want you doing with these. I want you to play around with the color, but not in such a way that you create something that doesn't look natural. It doesn't look believable that our eyes could walk outside or walk to wherever you took the photograph, and that we would see those things the way that you have presented them to us. Keep your color edits subtle enough that they feel natural, but that they are doing the things that your eyes feel like they should be doing, right? Not, ooh, let me see if I can shift someone's skin toward purple, right? Now, if you want to do that for your own purposes, that's fine, but not for this assignment. For this assignment, I want you looking for ways to accentuate the colors in a way that still looks natural and yet enhances your photograph. Okay, all right. Take care, everybody. Bye.